Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. Sensex and Nifty gain after a steady session on the Lal Street. Nifty manages to hold above the 22,500 mark. Rupee gains strength against the dollar. India's exports and imports see a sharp drop in February amidst US President Donald Trump's tariff wars. Trade deficit is at the lowest level in over 3 years. Trade gap for the first 11 months in FY25 rises 17% to more than $89 billion. A Moody's report says that Tata Motors, whose JLR cars are manufactured in the EU, along with Samvardhan Motherson, which has a 20% US exposure, could be impacted due to Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Adds that TCS and Infosys are better positioned to absorb increased immigration and visa costs. Maruti Suzuki to hike vehicle prices by up to 4% from April to offset the impact of rising input costs. This would be its third price hike this year. Tata Motors also announces up to a 2% price hike for its commercial vehicle segment. Shares of Ola Electric hit the lowest level since listing after a contractor seeks to initiate insolvency proceedings against the company. Crossmerta Digital alleges default in payments and moves the company law tribunal. US President Donald Trump says that he will talk to Russia's Vladimir Putin on Tuesday about ending the war in Ukraine. Trump claims negotiators have already discussed steps to divide certain assets. China welcomes positive remarks by Prime Minister Moody on strengthening the bilateral ties. Prime Minister signaled a hopeful outlook to podcaster Lex Friedman, saying that the process of rebuilding trust has begun. Net direct tax collections rise 13% till March 16th of this financial year. The mop-up from securities transaction tax spikes 55% to more than 53,000 crore rupees amidst the stock market frenzy. Relief for Gautam Adani and Rajesh Adani in an alleged market regulations violations case that dates back to 2012. The Bombay High Court quashes the November 2019 Sessions Court order that refused to grant them relief. The High Court had stayed the order in December 2019 itself, with interim relief being extended from time to time. Supreme Court agrees to hear the petition alleging lack of independence at the Comptroller and Auditor General, claims CAG is favouring the ruling government and demands an independent selection panel to appoint the top auditor. NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore scheduled to return home this Wednesday after being stranded at the International Space Station for nearly 9 months. A SpaceX capsule delivered 4 astronauts to the space station in what was a crew swap mission. Well, let's begin with a quick look at the day's trading action. Money market first. The Indian rupee gained some strength against the US dollar today. The rupee gained about 18 paise to end below the 87 levels against the greenback. The dollar index saw a strong rally over the last few weeks, and that appears to be losing steam now. Stock markets, meanwhile, were largely steady in trade today. The Sensex gained over 340 points. The Nifty, meanwhile, gained about 0.5% and managed to end above the 22,500 mark. Financial stocks gained in trade. The mid-caps outperformed the blue chips, with the index gaining over 330 points. Now, speaking of shares, the shares of recently listed MobiKwik, IKS and SciLife tumbled after the end of the lock-in period for the IPO investors. Investors have collectively incurred a loss of 17,000 crore rupees since the listing in December. The erosion in market capitalization from their peaks stands at 30,000 crore rupees. Now, oil prices edged higher after the United States said that it will keep attacking the Houthis, the Yemen separatist group organization, until the Iran-backed group ends attacks on shipping. The latest airstrikes by the US killed at least 53 people. As per Houthi rebels, gold prices firmed up as geopolitical tensions and economic concerns over the tariff war triggered by the US fueled safe haven demand. Gold has gained around 14% so far this year. Meanwhile, Bitcoin prices remain steady but hovered below the 84,000 to $1 mark. Now, India's imports and exports witnessed a sharp drop in the month of February. Exports are down 11%. The imports are down 16% for February. The trade deficit for the month stands at $14 billion for the period between April 2024 to February of 2025, the trade deficit widened by nearly 17%. Imports rose 7.2%, while the exports also jumped 6.2% during this period. Lata Venkatesh is here with more details. Lata, tell us what you make of these numbers and the implications for the economy.
Well, first up, the goods trade deficit coming in at $14 billion is the lowest we have seen since August of 2021. 3.5-year low. Now, normally, in normal month, the monthly trade deficit ranges that, I'm only speaking of goods. Goods trade deficit ranges between 15 billion and 25 billion, more in the 20s. 1 or 2 months, it has even been $30 billion. So 14 billion is really abnormally low for a normal month. Remember, 2021 was COVID lockdown months, as was 2020, when we had these low trade deficit numbers. Commerce Ministry officials, however, in their press conference said this is only because of a high base in February when imports were high. Crude prices have fallen a bit this February, and gold imports were a little lower. That's their explanation. But let me tell you the positive. If you count the services plus goods, then this month we are reporting a surplus in trade, which is again the first time we are reporting a surplus since May of 2021. And at that time we reported a surplus because we imported almost nothing. Those were COVID lockdown months. So this surplus is something we can thump the table about. The February surplus number implies that a similar thing could be repeated in March, because services is really going strong, services exports, and therefore for the full quarter, Jan, Feb, March, we may report a current account surplus, and that can push the whole full year current account deficit from the 1 to 1.2% of GDP that was estimated all the way down to 0.5% to 0.75% of GDP, which is remarkable considering that we have a capital flows deficit this year. The very low current account deficit is very welcome. Now, what is the negative? The February deficit falling to 14 billion is because imports have fallen to a 3-year low at $50 billion. That is the worry. Is this because the economy is not able to consume enough imports? Is there a slowdown? Remember, the PMI in February also came at a 14-month low, and auto sales were also pretty poor. Entry-level cars, two-wheelers, domestic sales generally did badly. So that's the only fear about this number.
Right, Lata, thanks so much for that. Clearly, the numbers could be a mixed bag there. Now, moving focus, US President Donald Trump has said that he has no intentions of creating exemptions on steel and aluminum tariffs. Trump, who was speaking at the board on board the Air Force One, added that reciprocal and sectoral tariffs, including those on autos, will go into effect from the 2nd of April, a date he referred to as a liberating day. Remember, Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports went into effect on the 12th of March. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has dismissed concerns over a stock market sell-off amidst Trump's tariff threats.
I would have made it April 1st, but you know what April 1st is? April Fool's Day. I figured, I don't like doing it, but I made it April 2nd. But it's a liberation day for our country, because we're going to be getting back a lot of the wealth that we so foolishly gave up to other countries, including friend and foe. If they're charging us, we're charging them. It's no longer they charge us and we don't charge them.
I'm not concerned about a little bit of volatility over 3 weeks, because if you look over the long term, the reason stocks are a safe and great investment is because you're looking over the long term. If you start looking at micro horizons, stocks become very risky. So we are focused over the medium long term, and I can't tell you that the market is going to go up today, tomorrow, next week, but I can tell you that if we put proper policies in place, it's going to lay the groundwork for both real income gains and job gains and continued asset gains.
So are Indian companies prepared for Trump's reciprocal tariffs? Well, Moody's report says that Tata Motors and Samvardhan Motherson are likely to bear the brunt of tariffs. Moody's has said that the impact depends on how much of these tariffs are passed on to the customers. Parikshit Luthra is joining us now with more details. Parikshit.
Well, yes, Moody's Analytics has looked at the impact of US reciprocal tariffs that will come into effect from 2nd of April on companies and nations in South and Southeast Asia. They've said significant domestic operations in companies located in this region will prevent any major negative impact of US reciprocal tariffs. But there are sectors which will face some heat. Those are the automotive, steel, chemicals and business services sector, which would have the highest exposure and would be the most vulnerable to US reciprocal tariffs. Now, they've looked at certain companies in the auto space. Let's begin with that. Samvardhana Motherson. They said that because this company generates 20% of its revenues from the United States, therefore, any kind of reciprocal tariffs on goods coming in from India into the US would mean a price increase for Samvardhana, and they will have to pass on the cost increase to their customers. Having said that, they've also said this company has been following a very diverse strategy, and this diversification strategy will reduce risks for them. For JLR, they have said that decline in demand from US for JLR would be a credit negative, and JLR is exposed to higher US tariffs because the cars coming into the United States from JLR stable are made in either Europe or the United Kingdom. Now, when it comes to business services, TCS and Infosys could be impacted because remember, when it comes to the H-1B visa, 75% of the beneficiaries are Indian nationals. But Moody says both these companies are better positioned to absorb any kind of increased immigration and visa costs because of a strong balance sheet. However, business service providers remain vulnerable to changes in US immigration policy. When it comes to Reliance Industries, Moody's has said that a strong balance sheet can make sure that Reliance will absorb any potential declines in demand or reduced profit, but the company could be indirectly exposed to escalating trade tensions. So net, this was the impact of tariffs according to Moody's Analytics. It has been said that India would be impacted as well, but it could be marginal for some of the stronger companies in the region.
Right, Pariksha, thanks so much for that. Now, US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard met Prime Minister Narendra Modi today. Gabbard is the first senior official of the Trump administration to travel to India. Earlier in the day, she held bilateral talks with the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh in a bid to boost ties between the nations. The two leaders discussed a wide range of issues, including defense and sharing critical information. Speaking to ANI, Gabbard defended Trump's reciprocal tariffs, citing that both India and the US are working towards finding good economic solutions.
There is an opportunity here to see more potential for the strengthening of our economic relationship. And I'm glad to see that they're looking at it in a more positive light than just one that is focused in a negative way when we look at tariffs. Obviously, Prime Minister Modi is looking out for what is in the best interests of India's economy and the opportunities available for the people of India. Similarly, President Trump is doing the same for the United States, our economic interests and the interests of the American people. So what I see as a great positive is that we have two leaders who have common sense and who are looking for good solutions.
Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has inaugurated the 10th edition of Raisina Dialogue. New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon was the chief guest at the three-day event. A large US contingent is in attendance. Tulsi Gabbard, the new Director of National Intelligence at the United States, will also speak at the event. Now, China has welcomed what it called positive remarks by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on strengthening bilateral ties between both the countries. Speaking to American podcaster Lex Friedman, Prime Minister Modi signaled, saying that the process of rebuilding trust has begun. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson says, and I quote, "The two countries should be partners that contribute to each other's success. A ballet dance between dragon and elephant is the only choice for both sides." End of quote. Relationship between both the countries have been strained following a clash between the two armies in the Galwan Valley 5 years ago. Here's what the Prime Minister told the podcaster Lex Friedman on the relationship with China.
इन संबंधों को ऐसे ही मजबूत रहना चाहिए, कंटिन्यू रहना चाहिए। ये हमारा जहाँ तक डिफरेंसेस तो होते हैं, दो पड़ोसी देश होते हैं तो कुछ ना कुछ तो होता है। उसी प्रकार से हम डिस्कॉर्ड नहीं, डायलॉग इसी पर बल देते हैं, तभी जाकर के एक स्टेबल कोऑपरेटिव रिलेशनशिप और दोनों ही देशों के लिए बेस्ट इंटरेस्ट में है.
And well, speaking of China, the industrial production in the first 2 months of 2025 grew by 5.9%, exceeding expectations. The country's retail sales for the period were also in line with expectations, growing 4% compared to last year. Yesterday, China announced a special action plan to boost consumption. Beijing has said that the plan will include multiple measures to stabilize the stock market. The plan also called for actions to increase incomes of both urban and rural residents. Well, staying with news from China, top global CEOs are set to travel to Beijing for an annual gathering of top executives. Reports have said that the top executives are expected to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping on the 28th of March. Details of the meeting have not been released yet. Now back home and onto the auto sector, Maruti Suzuki will hike vehicle prices by as much as 4% from April to offset the impact of rising input costs. This would be the third time that the company has increased the cost of its vehicles this year. Tata Motors has also announced that it will be hiking prices by up to 2% for commercial vehicle segment. Sudarshan Kumar is joining us now with more on that. Sudarshan.
Two auto companies that have announced price increase today are Maruti Suzuki and Tata Motors. Maruti Suzuki has announced a price increase by up to 4% and that would be effective April 1, and Tata Motors has announced a price increase by up to 2% for its commercial vehicle segment, and this too will be effective April 1. So first talking about Maruti, it's the third price hike in the recent past. The first price hike recently was announced by Maruti in December 2024, which was effective January 1, and the second price increase announced in January was effective Feb, and today's price increase announcement will be effective April 1, and the price increase by Maruti has been by up to 4% each in the last 3 times that company has taken a price increase. So why the price hike has been taken by these companies? As per companies, price has increased for certain products, and that's the reason these companies have taken a price increase. But the question is, apart from an increase in price of certain products, are the falling sales also one of the reasons of the price increase? Because if you look at the February wholesale data, sales were largely below estimates, especially for the entry-level segment, not only for four-wheelers but also for two-wheelers. Especially for Maruti, Espresso and Alto's sales in February wholesales were down 30% each. Now, retail data for the first 2 weeks of March also suggests that demand remains under pressure. Now, talking the segment-wise, in the first 2 weeks of March, registration of two-wheelers has been down 16%. For passenger vehicles, registration is down 22%, and for commercial vehicles, it's down 15%.
Right, Sudarshan, thanks so much for that. Now, shares of Ola Electric tanked over 8% in trade to hit its lowest price since listing in August of last year. The slump came a day after vehicle registration agency Rosmerta Digital Services sued its wholly owned subsidiary Ola Electric Technologies for defaulting on payments. In a plea filed with NCLT Bengaluru, Rosmerta also petitioned to initiate corporate insolvency proceedings against the subsidiary. Sources have said that Ola Electric owes Rosmerta Digital Services between 18 to 20 crore rupees. Ola Electric has said that it strongly disputes the claims and will take necessary legal actions. And SpiceJet shares surged after the company announced that its CEO and promoter Ajay Singh will infuse 295 crore rupees into the airline via its promoter Spice Healthcare. SpiceJet has said that the fresh infusion will take place through conversion of 13 crore warrants into 13 crore equity shares. This will increase the consolidated shareholding of the promoter group in the airline to 33% from earlier 29%. Now, CEO Ajay Singh will dispose of up to 3.15 crore equity shares to help Spice Healthcare partially fund the allotment of equity shares. Now, speaking of headline numbers, India's wholesale inflation rose to a 2-month high of 2.38% in the month of February, led by a rise in costs of manufactured food items, vegetable oils and beverages. However, vegetable prices eased, helping offset some of the inflationary pressures. Now, meanwhile, net direct tax collections has risen 13% till March 16th of this financial year. The mop-up from the securities transaction tax has also jumped 55% to more than 53,000 crore rupees. And this coming in amidst the stock market frenzy. Timsy Jaipuria joins us now with more details. Timsy, take us through these numbers.
Well, on the back of healthy personal tax collections, the direct tax data seems to be in line with the expectations and the revised estimates shared in the union budget. According to the government, the direct tax collections for the current fiscal as on 16th March seems to be encouraging. The data says that the gross direct tax collections for the current fiscal are up 16.2% at 25.87 lakh crore rupees on a year-on-year basis. Similarly, as on 16th March, net direct tax collections are up 13.1% at 21.27 lakh crore rupees. The net corporate tax collections are a little subdued at 9.69 lakh crore rupees versus 9.05 lakh crore rupees during the same period this year when compared to last year. But when it comes to the non-corporate tax collections, that's where the silver lining is. Post refunds, they netted at 11.01 lakh crore rupees this year till 16th March as against 9.37 lakh crore rupees till 16th March last year. Similarly, net STT collections for the fiscal as on 16th March came in at 53,095 crore rupees versus 34,131 crore rupees. According to experts, this trend shows an increasing reliance and growth on personal taxes as opposed to corporate income tax. Driving deeper into the trends, experts say that the corporate earnings slowing down is showing up in the lower corporate tax collections. Similarly, a slowdown in STT growth in this particular quarter, that is the last quarter, is also indicative of the current state of capital markets, which is why there is a blip in the STT collections which is bringing it down further. And now to be seen is what are the final figures for the fiscal by the end of March, something that we'll have to wait and watch for.
Right, Timsy, thanks so much for that. Now, more news from the North Block. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has launched a mobile application for Prime Minister's internship scheme. The app aims to streamline registration for its second round. The move will also be targeting towards boosting participation by offering a mobile-friendly alternative. Speaking at the event, Finance Minister said that over 700 districts will now be covered under this scheme and that the government aims to provide 1 crore internships in 5 years. The NCLAT has deferred the hearing on the competition watchdog CCI's case against WhatsApp's 2021 privacy policy. The tribunal cited the upcoming digital personal data protection rules for its decision. The government has released the draft rules for consultation. The NCLAT said that it will hear the case after the notification of these rules. Remember, the tribunal had stayed the CCI's earlier order barring WhatsApp from transferring user data to Meta, its parent, for 5 years in January of 2025. More legal action. The Bombay High Court has discharged a case of alleged market regulation violation against Gautam Adani and Rajesh Adani, which dates back to 2012. The Serious Fraud Investigation Office had initiated legal proceedings against Adani Enterprises Limited and its promoters in 2012. The agency accused them of criminal conspiracy and cheating. The Adanis moved the Bombay High Court after a sessions court in November of 2019 refused to give them relief. On to the top court, the Supreme Court has issued a notice to the centre on a petition challenging the government's power to appoint the Comptroller and Auditor General. The PIL has sought an independent selection panel to appoint the CAG. The court has sought for a response from the centre. The plea also argued that the CAG is tasked with auditing and is favouring the centre. The Mumbai Police's Economic Offences Wing filed a charge sheet in the Torres Ponzi scheme. As per the charge sheet, over 14,000 investors were scammed to the tune of over 142 crore rupees. 8 people have been arrested. The scam first surfaced in January this year. And coming up on India Business Hour, US President Donald Trump says that he will walk to Russia's Vladimir Putin on Tuesday about ending the war in Ukraine. Trump's claims negotiators have already discussed steps to divide certain assets. More on this in just a bit. And you can also catch all CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, and Jio Hotstar. Well, you are watching India Business Hour. Now, Israel continues its attack on the Gaza Strip while blocking humanitarian aid. As per Palestine media, a 62-year-old civilian was killed in an airstrike last night. The offensive continues even as an Israeli delegation traveled to Cairo to discuss the details of this ceasefire with Egyptian officials. UNICEF has said that there is an urgency to allow water and electricity into the enclave, or else lives of children will be in jeopardy. US President Donald Trump will be speaking with Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow as a part of efforts to end the 3-year-long war in Ukraine. This comes days after Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire proposal by the United States. Trump claimed that a lot of work was done over the weekend and there may be good chance to bring an end to the war. He added that negotiators have already discussed dividing up certain assets.
We want to see if we can bring that war to an end. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I think we have a very good chance. We'll be talking about land, we'll be talking about power plants, because that's up, it's a big question. But I think we have a lot of it already discussed very much by both sides.
You'll ask him.
Ukraine and Russia.
You'll ask him.
We're already talking about that, dividing up certain assets. Yeah, and they've been working on that.
NASA astronauts Sunitha Williams and Butch Wilmore are scheduled to return home this Wednesday after being stranded at the International Space Station for nearly 9 months. A SpaceX capsule delivered 4 astronauts to the space station in what was a crew swap mission. What smiling faces there on NASA cams. But that's all the time that we have. It's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates will continue right here on CNBC TV 18.